Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Thanks for stopping by. Everyone who reads It Must Converse is the channel. You can see I got roasted today, right? Georgia, that's what we do. It's on hot. So this is another installment in the Buddhist series. We're still in the fundamentals kind of place, but we're quickly getting on the other side of that. So if you're interested in this, check out the playlist on my channel. That'll give all the kind of background I can think of that I need to then just talk about texts and traditions, because Buddhism moved through culture after culture after culture and has transformed culture after culture, and now is a worldwide religion, living religion. It is kind of a misnomer to call Buddhism a religion, as far as the big three, to tell you the truth, because on Buddhism we don't rely on it. Buddhists don't rely on any kind of God, for lack of a better word. The Buddha, not the the historical Buddha is no God. The historical Buddha was a man that gained a certain level of enlightenment, of knowledge and wisdom, because of his own efforts, and not efforts just in this lifetime. If you're interested in this, then I have a playlist. So I just wanted to point you right there, because I'm going through all these kind of fundamentals first, so that then I can touch on different texts and traditions, and we can then I can just talk more freely and just link different texts and traditions. So I did a video just a little while back that's all of conditioned existence, the planes of existence, as far as beings that are conditioned, that are in the creation, what we would call the creation in a Western framework. Now, it's populated by all different kinds of beings, of course. I mean, we see them in our daily life, right? Animals, plants, human beings. There's all kinds of beings around, right? And now, all of this is part of conditioned existence. So, I thought that I should go through the types of spiritual beings that there are in Buddhist thinking. So when the Buddha gave his first teachings, the Pali Canon, now the Buddha is known as a Bodhisattva. That's the kind of being that he is. And that is translated to an enlightenment being. That's a being that is his whole focus of any lifetime, cyclical existence, of course, rebirth after rebirth. He's focused on enlightenment. He's focused on, he, she, it, no matter what kind of existence he has, what kind of birth, that being is developing the 6 perfections. They are virtues: generosity, kindness, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Those perfections are constant practice, and they're pretty much the only practice, because you can see those virtues encompass all positive behavior, no matter what. They encompass all positive dealings with other people: patience, kindness, generosity, wisdom, concentration, energy. They encompass all, and I mean, even in Buddhist thought, it said that generosity itself, just being generous, encompasses all the virtues within itself. And because you can always give, and it takes patience to give, and it takes kindness to give, and it takes wisdom to give, and it takes effort to give, and it takes concentration to give. So The type of being that the Buddha was, he gives in the Pali Canon a whole string of previous lifetimes that he lived through, whether it be animals, different humans, all kinds of beings, beings in a hell realm, beings in a certain type of heaven, like refer to the cosmology video. He was in all, just like we all have been in Buddhist thinking. We've lived millions upon millions of lifetimes since beginningless time. There's been falls, there's been raising ourselves up, and all the time, the only thing that we're trying to do is gain more understanding and wisdom and shed ignorance and delusion. Because you can be ignorant and have an amount of deluded ideas and still be in a heaven. The delusion and the ignorance is very subtle in that kind of realm, but you can be there. And so the gods, their ignorance in Buddhist way of thinking is that they think that they're going to live forever. They think that they're going to be in the spot that they are forever. And that's not the case. And so they, use all their good karma up in that kind of spot. And then they fall down to being, a human being again. Which is not really a bad thing, because human beings are who, we're the type of being in Buddhist thinking that can progress and grow the most. We have the most opportunity here, even though we have a lot of hardship, for sure, right? So a bodhisattva is a being that goes through lifetime after lifetime only developing those 6 perfections and virtues. And the stories of the Buddha's previous lifetimes in the Pali Canon is called the Jataka tales. And so in that, we can get a good idea of what a bodhisattva is. And it is actually a being that his ultimate end is to become a Buddha. Because a Buddha is a pure embodiment of enlightenment energy. That's the kind of thing. And it's just there to give out to everyone that he comes in contact with in his life, and transform a world system, transform a planet, transform a culture, and that kind of thing towards virtue. That's the goal of a bodhisattva, is to become a Buddha. But that is an extremely long path, and to have the foresight to go for that kind of existence, to make that kind of vow, to practice that, and to go for that kind of existence is, takes a certain kind of being, an enlightenment being, a bodhisattva. So there's the first type that I want to touch on, the bodhisattva, and we're going to touch on the bodhisattva in a little bit. The second type I want to touch on is, the Buddha taught beings, right, human beings, that saw that there is a spiritual nature to man. They see that there's a spiritual path. They want to tread a spiritual path, and they want to progress. Well, how to do that? How do we overcome virtue? Really, how do we do mind work, inner work, path work, mind science stuff, all the kind of things that it takes to really progress toward virtue, and to really shed vices, and to overcome ignorance within ourselves, and to shed delusions that we might not even know that we have. Okay, how do you do this kind of work? And those kind of beings are called Shravakas. That means hearers. So they hear teachings. They hear the Dharma, capital D. So capital D Dharma is a word that is used for, in Sanskrit, it is the teaching. So they hear the teaching and they put it into practice. So they're actually disciples, and they are monks. They are practitioners. And what is their goal? The Buddha taught the practitioners and all the Shravakas, all the hearers, to attain a state called nirvana. Now, nirvana is not, a complete enlightenment, an illuminated state like a Buddha. Nirvana is a state of peace. Nirvana breaks the cycle of birth and death. In their cosmology, we're in a rebirth. So nirvana breaks that cycle. And once you break that cycle, then you're free, right? Freer, for sure. Once a disciple, a Shravaka, earns attains a level of nirvana, peace, it's actually non-function. And once they attain that level, then they're way more free to spiritually progress, just to listen to more teachings and apply them to their consciousnesses and progress towards illumination. They're called stream enterers, and they enter a stream that ends in illumination. So a being that attains that in the literature is called an arhat. An arhat. Arhat, I believe is correct, but it's a whole different language. So, and that kind of being is the kind of beings that we come into contact with, a Shravaka, in the literature a lot. That's the kind of beings, that's a human being that is actually devoted to practice. They're practitioners that the Buddha is giving teachings to. That is the main type of being that we come in contact with besides Bodhisattvas. Now, a Bodhisattva, there's all kinds of Bodhisattvas. And we'll touch on them in a little bit. I wanted to bring up the third type of being, spiritual being, that we come in contact with in Buddhist literature is a Pratyekabuddha. So a Pratyekabuddha means a privately enlightened Buddha. Now, if somebody goes to a cave in a mountain, you'll find this kind of story big in India, not India, in Nepal and in China, especially in China, where these it's the story of the monk that renounces everything and goes to live in a cave and actually eats, takes with him a modest amount of food and actually eats just like a mustard seed a day or something, and does nothing but meditate, does nothing but study a scripture of some kind, a sutra, and meditate that sutra and apply the mental and do the mental work to cut off all karma, to break the cycle. And when that kind of being, this Pratyekabuddha, is a different kind of being because they gain an enlightened state, an actual break from the conditioned existence. And they gain illumination, spiritual illumination, but they don't then go out to give teachings or something. They're not enlightenment beings. They're not devoted to spreading the enlightenment energy in the human realm and to all humans, to all beings. They're not even concerned about that. They're privately enlightened Buddhas, and they just enter, go back to the source. They go back to the primal, very, very, very primal spiritual state. The unlimited potential field called shunyata in Chinese. Shunyata means emptiness. And that is the kind of emptiness that I've touched on before. That is not empty. It is not nothing. It is an emptiness that is actually full of potential. It is full of life. It is the emptiness, a field. It is a field, like in our Western science might describe it as an energy field that is chaos, an energy field from which everything springs. So like a quantum field. That's what shunyata or emptiness is. So those are the three types of enlightened beings. A Bodhisattva, a Shravaka or hearer or disciple, and a Pratyekabuddha or a privately enlightened Buddha. Now, in Buddhist literature, it is shown and said that actually the only goal is, or the only path is that of the Bodhisattva. Because when it comes down to it, there is no self in Buddhism, right? There's the three marks that I've touched on in a previous video as well. The three marks. That is no self. That is the unsatisfactory, the world, or everything, every being in the world, in the creation, in conditioned existence has these three marks. It is unsatisfactory, it is no self, and it is interdependent. It is dependent upon other things for its existence. We are all in this together. And those three marks are universal. They're for every single thing that is in our world, that is a being. They couldn't exist without anything else. It ultimately is unsatisfactory because it won't last. And you're constantly put up against things that are undesirable, and you have to use it as a step to grow and learn more. And the thing that might be the toughest to wrap our Western way of thinking around is no self. Because what it's actually saying is that there's no thing that is essentially just you. Just you, like what we would call a soul. There is not a soul in a being that is separate from anything else. Well, I would claim that in the Western, in the Christian way of thinking, that our soul is not separate. Of course it's not. Our soul is part and parcel of the Spirit, and the Spirit is God, and the Spirit is a universal that is in everyone, and it's the same for everyone. And so, in Christianity, in a Western way of thinking, it can be argued, that there is that kind of idea of what the Buddhists describe as no self. But ultimately, what that means is that there is nothing that is unchanging, even inside you at the most subtle level. There is nothing that is unchanging to you that is going to endure on for an eternal amount of time. So these kind of beings that are the Shravakas and the Pratyekabuddhas, they are destined to still keep growing, right? Because the only goal that there is complete spiritual illumination. And complete spiritual illumination is Buddhahood. Becoming a Buddha and being a fully enlightened being. And in Western thinking, we would call that union with God. That's the only final goal, is union with God. In Buddhism, it is called supreme Buddhahood. So in that way, there is just, one path. There's actually only one type of spiritual being, because there's only one goal that everybody is going to get to. And that path is the Bodhisattva path, the path that is completely so long, so many lifetimes, because there's so much virtue that you need to understand and to build within your energy to be able to actually embody a being like that. But it's not you that does that. This is a lifetime, in a Buddhist way of thinking, this is a lifetime in which we have to do something, right? And what we do is we do that. We're going to cultivate virtue, and we're going to add a little bit to that enlightenment energy. And that's it. We're going to add as much as we can in one lifetime, and then when we die, it's not the end of anything. That energy goes out, and our energy, goes out, and when again another being is formed, birth, then that energy contributes to that being's life. And our consciousness is constantly being augmented from lifetime after lifetime. So, hope it made some sense. Let you guys know a little bit about what kind of spiritual beings there are that are involved in spiritual path work. And catch you on the next one, BookTube. Thank you. Bye-bye.